Hello there. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Find a soft place to rest. Perhaps you're already curled under a blanket. Perhaps there's a pillow just right for your head. Let your shoulders drop and let the day melt away. Imagine a quiet room, just for you, a small lamp glowing nearby, perhaps a candle flickering softly. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of a clock ticking, slow and steady, marking the end of the day. Picture a bedroom in the late 1800s. The room is neither grand nor poor, just a middle glass chamber belonging to a young woman, perhaps the daughter of a merchant or a clerk. The wallpaper is patterned in soft flowers, faded greens, pale pinks, cream tones, and the furniture is dark polished wood. There is a small writing desk under the window, with a neat stack of letters tied in ribbon. On the mantel, a clock ticks faintly, and a few small porcelain figurines stand in a row, gathering dust in the corners. On the dresser, near the mirror, is where the story begins. The mirror is oval, shaped and framed in walnut, just tall enough to reflect a person's face and shoulders. Before it are all the treasures of her beauty routine: small glass jars, ivory, handled brushes, powders and perfumes, tiny tins and bottles, some imported from Paris, others from London shops. To us, these seem like charming artifacts, but for her, they were daily tools. She wakes each morning and begins the ritual quietly as sunlight creeps through lace curtains. First, she washes her face in a porcelain basin filled with cool water from the jug on her washstand. There is no running tap water in most homes, so every morning and evening someone must fetch fresh water, often a younger maid if the family can afford one. She dips a soft cloth in the cool water, dabs her face, and pats it dry. Then come the powders. This is where the story turns peculiar, for many of these powders were made with ingredients we would now call dangerous. White lead, for instance, was a common component of face powder. It created a pale, porcelain-like complexion considered the height of beauty. In Victorian fashion, to look slightly pale was elegant, a sign that one was not working under the sun. A clear white face hinted at refinement. So she dips a little puff into the powder and gently presses it onto her cheeks, her forehead, and chin. The powder leaves a faint, ghostly softness on her skin. Perhaps she does not know that lead is slowly absorbed through the skin. Perhaps she does, but ignores the danger, because beauty is a powerful thing, and because every other young woman is doing the same. There is no rush as she continues. The brush glides softly through her long hair, perhaps chestnut brown or golden fair, drawn back into smooth braids. Hair was a woman's crowning glory in this age, and she might use a little pomade or oil to keep it shiny. These products, too, sometimes contained substances like mercury or arsenic, meant to preserve color or texture. She does not think of these things. She is thinking about the day ahead, a visit to friends, perhaps an afternoon tea, or a quiet hour in the garden with a book. She buttons her dress carefully, so many buttons, running from neck to waist. The fabric is stiff but lovely, maybe cotton for morning wear, or silk if the occasion calls for it. The day passes slowly, gently in this household. Outside the window, horses clop past on the street, pulling small carriages. The air smells faintly of coal smoke from chimneys nearby. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barks once or twice, then quiets again. If we follow her to the drawing room, we might see more clues of these hidden dangers. On the table lies a fashion magazine, perhaps the Queen or the Ladies' Pictorial, showing the latest gowns, hairstyles, and recommended products. Advertisements promise perfect complexions, with powders, lotions, and soaps that are secretly laced with lead or arsenic. The pictures show smiling ladies with rosy lips, assuring the reader that beauty is within reach. Victorian women were not fools. They sometimes suspected that certain products were risky. But medicine was not as advanced, and regulations were few. Many products were homemade, sold by local chemists, or imported with little testing. Even the green wallpaper on her walls may contain arsenic pigments. That soft, pretty green called Shields green, or Paris green, was a popular color in the 19th century, but its pigment was made with copper arsenite. Over time, in damp rooms, it could release poisonous dust. People sometimes fell ill without knowing why, and yet our young woman continues her day in peace. She does not feel sick. She does not worry. Life to her feels normal, a gentle rhythm of sewing, reading, taking tea, perhaps writing letters by the glow of a lamp in the evening. At night, when the house grows still, she returns to her room. Imagine a small oil lamp casting a golden circle on the dresser. The curtains are drawn. Somewhere outside, perhaps in the distance, a church bell chimes softly, marking the hour. She sits before the mirror again, this time to remove the day's powder with a soft cloth. Perhaps she applies a lotion to keep her skin soft, one that may contain a trace of mercury chloride, thought to treat freckles. She does not think about mercury as a poison. She only knows that her skin looks a little clearer in the morning. There is something almost meditative about this routine. Slow motions, soft brushes, the faint clink of glass bottles, the sounds of a house settling at night. If you imagine yourself there, you might almost hear the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel, the crackle of the last coal in the grate, the rustle of skirts as she moves. And then, at last, she braids her hair, blows out the lamp, and lies down beneath the coverlet. The house falls silent, except perhaps for the wind brushing gently against the windows. And though we, from our modern time, know that her beauty products were filled with hidden dangers, we must remember that to her this was simply the way life was. There was no fear in her heart as she drifted to sleep, and so we pause here in the quiet of this Victorian bedroom. We have not hurried through her day. We have noticed the small things, the light, the sound of fabric, the smell of coal smoke, the quiet dangers hidden in everyday objects. This is only the beginning of the story, of course. As we continue, we will learn about the history behind these products, how they were made, why they were used, and how society slowly began to understand their dangers. But for now, let us rest a moment longer in this room, as the moonlight falls through the curtains, and everything is still. As the house sleeps, we can wander gently into the deeper story of her world. The soft glow of moonlight is still across her floor, but time itself begins to turn backward, and we find ourselves floating into the history of these curious beauty rituals. Victorian beauty was not simply a matter of vanity. It was an expectation woven gently into the fabric of life. Women were encouraged to be graceful, to look delicate, to keep their skin pale and smooth. To be too tanned meant one had been working outdoors, not something fashionable ladies wished to display. To be too bold with cosmetics was frowned upon. Too paint and rouge were considered theatrical, if applied heavily. So the challenge was to look naturally perfect, as if one had awakened already flawless. And this is where the strange ingredients came in. Lead had been used for centuries before the Victorians ever touched it. The Romans used lead-based cosmetics to whiten their faces, and Elizabethan ladies did the same, applying Venetian ceruse, a paste of lead carbonate. It created a smooth, pale mask-like effect. By the 19th century, the practice had not disappeared. Small tins of lead-based face powder were widely sold, promising a pearly whiteness. The advertisements sounded soothing, for the refinement of the complexion, for a velvety softness, and a youthful bloom. But of course, lead does not simply sit on the skin. Over time, it can seep into the body, causing fatigue, headaches, even stomach pain, what doctors of the time sometimes called painter's colic. But many women did not realize the connection. Imagine our Victorian woman again, sitting before her mirror. She does not know the science of lead absorption. The powder feels fine, almost silky. It hides small blemishes and gives her a faint glow. She may reapply it during the day, especially if she is going out to call on friends. In the quiet of the afternoon, perhaps she sits by the window, writing a letter. The powder drifts invisibly from her face, mixing with the dust in the room, settling on the furniture. Slowly, gently, she is breathing it in. If lead was subtle, arsenic was stranger still. Today we think of arsenic as something sinister, but in the 19th century it was used in everything from rat poison to pigments to health tonics. Some women even swallowed tiny doses of arsenic, believing it would make their skin clear and pale. Arsenic wafers were sold thin, sweet little tablets said to produce beauty from within. The dosage was meant to be small enough not to kill, but strong enough to affect the skin. In Austria and parts of rural England, stories tell of women taking arsenic to give their cheeks a faint pink glow. It sounds alarming to us, but to them it was no more unusual than taking a vitamin in pill today. Then there was the green pigment. Picture again her wallpaper, its cheerful green pattern. Or imagine a bright green dress in her wardrobe, a ball gown perhaps, with full skirts rustling softly as she walks. If it was dyed with arsenic pigment, it could release small amounts of dust when handled, which might irritate her skin or make her feel faint if she wore it for long. But the color was so fashionable. Emerald green, they called it, and so she wore it, smiling at herself in the mirror before heading to a dance. Mercury, too, found its way into beauty routines. Some skin creams contained mercuric chloride, meant to bleach freckles or smooth out a blotchy complexion. These lotions were sometimes applied overnight. Imagine her face glistening slightly in the lamplight as she dabs the cream onto her cheeks before bed, thinking of nothing more than looking fresh in the morning. Mercury was also used by hat makers, mad as a hatter. Was the phrase used for those who suffered tremors from prolonged mercury exposure, but in cosmetics. It was quieter, subtler, creeping into the bloodstream slowly. Let's take a moment here. Breathe softly. Listen to the imagined sounds of this Victorian house, the creak of wood as it cools for the night, the faint hiss of the last coal in the grate, the muffled sound of a carriage passing far away. These dangers, hidden though they were, did not make every day dark or fearful. Life still went on. Children still laughed in the garden. Women still gathered in parlors to drink tea and share gossip. Men returned from work with folded newspapers under their arms. Most of the time, the effects of these poisons were slow, creeping in over years, not hours, and so no one thought to blame the powder, or the cream, or the wallpaper. Let us step softly into the Victorian apothecary shop, where many of these products were purchased. The air smells of herbs and soap. Shelves rise to the ceiling, lined with jars and bottles labeled in neat lettering, tinct. Opii unguentum plum, by Latin names for tinctures and ointments. Behind the counter stands the chemist in a tidy coat, ready to mix a lotion or powder to order. Perhaps our young woman is there today, asking for a little more face powder, or a small bottle of rose water. The chemist spoons out white powder into a paper packet, folds it carefully, ties it with string, and writes the label in careful ink. There is a pleasant rhythm to this shop, the soft thud of the pestle on the mortar, the faint squeak of corks being fitted into bottles. Outside, the street is lively, but inside, the shop is calm, almost hushed, with dust motes hanging in the light that falls through the front window. When she returns home, there is dinner with the family candlelight flickering on silverware, the gentle murmur of conversation. After dinner, she may sit in the parlor, embroidering or reading aloud. Slowly, evening deepens. Lamps are lit. A maid might come around with a candle snuffer to lower the flames before bed. And once again, she climbs the stairs to her quiet room, where her little jars and powders await her. Perhaps she feels slightly tired, but who would not after a long day? She dips the puff in the powder again, patting her nose gently in the mirror. And the story continues, soft as ever, carrying her and us deeper into this strange but gentle past. Time drifts forward as softly as dawn rising over a quiet countryside. The year is still Victorian, but the air feels a little different. Doctors have begun to notice something unusual patterns that seem to repeat. Women, often young, with pale skin and tired eyes, coming to them with strange symptoms. Their hair falling out, their stomachs aching, their hands trembling ever so slightly. At first, no one is certain why. Life in the 19th century was filled with illnesses, tuberculosis, fevers, infections, and doctors did not always have clear answers. But slowly, gently, a picture begins to emerge. Imagine a Victorian physician in his study late at night, lamplight falling over papers and medical texts. There is a quiet rain outside, pattering against the window. He is writing careful notes about a patient he has seen, a young woman with pale lips, who uses a particular cosmetic powder. On the desk lies a sample of that powder. Perhaps he has sent it to a chemist friend for analysis, or perhaps he has done a simple test himself, discovering the telltale signs of lead. Doctors, like detectives, begin to share letters and papers on these cases. Medical journals of the time start to report cosmetic poisoning. Some writers gently warn women against certain products, though always in a cautious tone, so as not to seem too alarming. Little by little, word spreads. Not in a rush, there is no sudden shock, no loud headlines, but rather a slow ripple through society. Magazines that once printed glowing advertisements for powders now begin to run thoughtful essays about safer cosmetics. Reformers, often women themselves, write pamphlets urging their sisters to avoid arsenic-laced beauty aids. There is still skepticism. Some insist that these worries are exaggerated. Others argue that beauty has always required a little risk. But gradually, a new idea takes hold. Perhaps one can be beautiful without endangering one's health. Imagine, then, our young woman from earlier years. Perhaps she is married now, or perhaps she is still living with her family, but she has heard whispers that lead powder may not be safe. One morning, she looks at the little jar on her dresser, the one she has used for so long, and hesitates. She runs her finger through the powder, noticing its fine texture, the faint smell of the perfume mixed in. She sets it down again. Perhaps today she will go without, or perhaps she will try a new product, one said to be pure and harmless. Slowly, a shift is taking place, right there in the privacy of her own room. At the same time, concern about arsenic green wallpaper grows. Doctors had begun to suspect that some mysterious illnesses, headaches, fainting spells, even deaths were caused by the very walls of the house. In one quiet parlor, a family decides to replace their wallpaper with a softer, safer color. The new paper smells fresh and the air feels lighter. They may not fully understand the chemistry, but they trust the advice of their doctor, or perhaps a reform-minded newspaper that told them about arsenical dangers. Even dressmakers take note. The most fashionable green dyes begin to fall from favor, replaced by new synthetic colors that are not as dangerous. By the late Victorian period, new companies begin advertising non-poisonous powders. These are made with rice starch or zinc oxide, still pale and smooth, but without lead. Imagine the chemist shop again. Now on the counter there is a small sign, safe complexion powder free of injurious ingredients. Our young woman smiles, relieved. She purchases it and carries it home in a little paper packet. That evening, she sits at her mirror and applies it, noticing that it feels softer on the skin. She tells a friend about it the next day, over tea, and soon more women are asking for the same thing. This is how change often comes, not suddenly, not loudly, but slowly, gently, like a tide creeping up a beach. We can almost hear the quiet conversation of women sharing advice at sewing circles, of shopkeepers recommending safer products, of magazine editors writing small but firm recommendations. Even the government takes note, beginning to regulate certain substances, though true regulation will come later, in the early 20th century. Let us pause here and breathe again. The house is quiet, the lamps are low, and there is a faint sound of night birds outside. The story has carried us through decades of change, yet it has not disturbed us. We have watched the hidden poisons come to light, not with panic, but with patient discovery. We have seen our Victorian woman grow wiser, choosing safer powders, perhaps feeling a little healthier, a little lighter. It is a gentle reassurance that even when the world is slow to change, it can change for the better. As she braids her hair tonight, she feels at peace. The powder she used is safe, her wallpaper is fresh, and she can look in the mirror without worry. She snuffs out the lamp, moonlight falls across her bed, soft as silk, and as we leave her there, we feel as though the entire story has quieted too, ready for rest. The world outside is still, waiting for a new day. Time moves onward, as gently as mist rolling over a still morning field. The Victorian age slowly gives way to the Edwardian era, then to the 20th century, with its new technologies and its new ideas about health. Our story, though rooted in a single room, has quietly spanned decades. We began with a young woman at her dressing table, dipping a puff into white powder without a thought, and we have followed her and all women of her age as they moved toward greater awareness. And now, looking back, we can see how this era laid the foundation for what would come. The end of the Victorian period saw the beginning of what we might call modern beauty science. Chemists were learning more every year about toxicology, about the ways substances interact with the human body. New products were developed with safety in mind. Zinc oxide replaced white lead. Arsenic pigments faded from fashion. Mercury creams were discouraged. Imagine standing in a shop window display around 1900, seeing bright, fresh packaging, advertising, scientifically pure creams and powders. The labels now boast of being free from harmful substances, a phrase that must have been reassuring to women who remembered the older, riskier concoctions. Homes, too, became safer. Gas lighting gave way to electric lamps, reducing exposure to fumes. Plumbing improved, bringing running water to more homes, which made washing easier and healthier. Our Victorian woman, perhaps now older, perhaps now a mother herself, sits in her parlor with her daughters, watching them try on hats and adjust ribbons before an evening outing. She smiles softly, knowing that the powders they use are less dangerous than the ones she once relied on. There is a quiet satisfaction in that a sense that the world, slowly, is learning to care for itself. And as we reflect on this journey, we see that the pursuit of beauty has always been a deeply human thing. Across centuries, across cultures, people have sought to adorn themselves, to look graceful, to express who they are. Sometimes, as in the Victorian era, the tools we used were unknowingly harmful. And yet, from that age came also the curiosity, the careful observation, the willingness to ask, could there be a better way? Let us return, one last time, to that quiet bedroom. It is evening again. A fire glows low in the grate, casting soft golden light on the wallpaper. The dressing table still stands near the window, but its powders are safer now, its bottles filled with gentler perfumes. Our woman sits before the mirror, brushing her hair. Her movements are slow and unhurried. Outside, the night is still. Perhaps a nightingale is singing faintly somewhere beyond the garden. She sets down her brush, ties her hair loosely, and snuffs the lamp. The room falls into soft shadow. Now we too may rest. Let your own shoulders relax. Let your breathing slow. Imagine the quiet house around you, the wooden stairs, the faint scent of beeswax on the furniture, the muffled sounds of the world outside. You are safe here, as she was safe in her room. The story has ended, but its quiet rhythm can continue to carry you into sleep. The tale of Victorian women and their beauty rituals is not a loud story, not one of battles or revolutions, but one of daily life, of little decisions made before the mirror, of powders and perfumes, of curiosity and discovery. And as we close our eyes now, we leave behind the jars and brushes, the green wallpaper, the chemist's shop, the lamplit parlor. We leave it all gently, as though stepping away from a dream. Perhaps as you drift into sleep, you can hear the soft clop of a horse carriage far away, or the faint ticking of a clock in the hall. Perhaps you can feel the hush of a quiet Victorian night surrounding you. And now it is time to rest. The story has carried you here to this calm moment. Breathe once more slowly. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Good night,